It's Sunday night. The clock ticks over to 7 p.m. And then you hear it. It was a stark reminder that tomorrow is Monday. And on the menu tonight, an expose. And more importantly, that you, South Africa, have the right to know it all. Carte Blanche is not your average 35-year-old millennial. On this one's CV is experience, with more guts than fear factor, a hunger to uncover, beyond the politics and the tabloids, with a cum laude level of reporting, bringing more drama and action than Steve Hofmeyr and Julius Malema in a boxing match. But how did Carte Blanche score its lot of success?
Our next story attempts to shed a little light.
It's the 80s, and television is still a South African newbie, finding its feet between the terms and conditions of the government. But Koos Becker, Kobus Stoffberg, and Jack van der Merwe have an idea. They want to bring pay TV to South Africa, the first of its kind outside America. Despite the no's, they made it a yes. And with a measly 50,000 rand of Naspers coins in their pocket, it was a done deal. A channel called Mnet, officially launched in 1986. With a decoder and a monthly subscription fee of 29 rand, it took off. And it ran circles around the SABC. Viewers binged on a feast of international entertainment. This set the benchmark for South Africans' expectations. From sports to kids' TV. From our first soapy to reality shows.
Mnet puts you in the picture. It's a warm welcome to this, the first test transmission on Mnet.
And of course, Carte Blanche. Today, Carte Blanche doesn't look that much different than it did 35 years ago. The logo, the jingle, the time slot, it's still all the same. And until recently, even some of the faces. When Carte Blanche aired their first episode in August 1988, Derek Watts and Ruda Landman set the tone. It was a bilingual show, a weekly eye-opener, a show with zero restrictions, but they were strong-armed by the SABC.
We were the first Actuality. The license precluded news, which was defined as anything that happened in the previous 24 hours. So it was the only alternative voice. It was the first alternative voice for South Africans.
Going from politics to prostitution, if there's a difference.
Ruda was a news presenter, and Derek, an agile SABC sports presenter. And while the production company had their concerns for him batting hard-hitting journalism, Mnet said, "We want him, pinky pinch and all." And what they got was a 2-meter tower who became a beacon of South Africa. Derek Watts was born in Hillbrow. At the age of 5, he moved to Zimbabwe, a spirited young man who hated studying. After the army, he dove into a career of computer operations and worked at a plastics company. The reason why he ended up on our television screens was thanks to his former boss, who sparked the idea of journalism and fired him in the same conversation. He found his way back to Zimbabwe, joined the Herald newspaper, and eventually ended up at the SABC. First as a news writer, and then a top sports news anchor, along with Martin Locke.
I go for an interview with Koos and the rest of the team, and they virtually offer me the job. And then as I'm walking out, Bill says, "Derek, can you send me a tape of what you do?" So I said, "But Bill, I'm live on Top Sport. You can watch me for 8 hours." "Oh, okay, now I'll do that." I think, I'd seen him around SABC. I'd seen him at the airport in Cape Town. I just think he looked at me and said, "He'll do."
Yeah. Or maybe they had the wrong guy completely. They were looking for somebody completely different.
Could have been looking for Jeremy Maggs.
But it was Carte Blanche that made him a national treasure.
He was your Sunday uncle. and he was the uncle that you really saw life through.
Our beloved Derek, our Papa D.
And let me tell you what Derek would do. It doesn't matter if a flight was waiting. He would stand there and he would have a conversation.
The producers that do our stories often joke that it was terrible to work with Derek, because wherever you went, 5-10 people would stop you, would look into their eyes, would greet them, and he would really, really, really take his time to listen to their stories. I mean, people would tell, hey, Derek, I remember 20 years ago I met you at a Checkers, and Derek would just stand there and listen.
And we've had a few great busts or confrontations. We've had some which have been hilariously bad. One was with Rogue Motors in Pinetown, who'd been producing dodgy 4x4s. And I came into the workshop perfectly. He was bent over his Rogue 4x4. I was there a little bit backward, like be too much in front. I mean, you've got the greying sausage dog on a stick for sound. And, this is your moment. You got those few seconds. And he looked up and he said, Derek Watts, how are you, my mate?
Not the way the script was supposed to go.
Mabel, get some tea, Derek Watts.
With grace and real empathy, he did not shy away from the real tough questions.
And you speak to them and say, look, Carte Blanche is here. They want an interview regarding all the complaints.
But you're denying this use of cytotech, and yet virtually every patient was given a prescription for cytotech.
Not anymore, it wasn't Bloom. I don't know who gave in the scripts, but it's not me. Show me the prescription.
What about this one?
We've seen your phone. We know who you buy from. Hey? You don't deal with diesel.
I don't deal with all this.
But that's your phone. Well, how about we meet face to face and you can explain yourself?
Don't just arrest me. I don't have any.
We won't arrest you, but the police might.
Yeah.
What made him our favorite Sunday uncle was his charm and wit. From day one, Carte Blanche was able to create the magic that Mnet was after. And it's the director, William Forey, who dreamt up the idea, the very same name behind the legendary TV series Shaka Zulu.
I desperately wanted to do Shaka Zulu for personal reasons. And I just couldn't get the SABC interested, right? Because it was a black subject and they were not prepared to spend that kind of money.
And the name? Well, that wasn't part of Forey's pitch.
I think the name played a big role because, the name was a result of a competition. A little guy from the Cape won it. When I see somebody who is from France, they'll say, what do you do? I say, I'm a journalist. What's the name of the show? I say, Carte Blanche. They say, no, but I say it's French. And they say, oh no, Carte Blanche.
The start of Carte Blanche brought entertainment.
First show, Jeremy, we had Cocky Tubal, DJ in the studio. We had swimmers, we had Bond girls. It really was just a fun show.
It was the first executive producer who laid a foundation for solid investigative journalism, Pieter Sillier. And Carte Blanche was his first step to break free from the shackles of the SABC's controlling influence.
Coming from the SABC, I worked at the SABC in 85, 86, and the constant feeling of, can we say this? Are we allowed? Is this person allowed? Etc. And suddenly at Mnet, there was nothing like that.
88, and that was a dark period in South Africa's history.
We started with 60 Minutes, one of the greatest investigative shows in the world. We took the best from America and Australia and pitched them against our little local stories. And people were saying, guys, I think you can do better. Although you've got a thousandth of the budget. Yeah. And so we progressed in the 60 Minutes mold, which is asking sensitive questions, telling a story. But I guess the big change was when George Mazarakis joined us.
The intentions were very clear from the beginning. Challenge convention, tell stories about real life, groundbreaking news without prejudice.
The women aged between 18 and 25 lost their lives. The mother of one of the victims, Yamtanda, was too distraught to speak to us.
Everything the SABC shied away from in the 80s. And to top it all off, Carte Blanche was on the cutting edge of broadcast technology. Being the first show in South Africa to have a website and to launch interactive television.
I mean, the crew loved it, and everybody was, bumping elbows to try and get onto the show as an operator of some sort.
They kept up with trends, bringing the stories to a larger audience, launching a YouTube channel, a podcast, and even TikTok. They delivered on the promise that South Africans have the right to know it all. The SABC was inspired, more than likely scared to lose viewers, and subsequently started taking notes. There was Focus with Fred Robinson, who chaired the debate between Nelson Mandela and F.W. de Klerk before the '94 elections. 4 years later, we got Special Assignment. Its in-depth stories were an instant hit for those who did not have a decoder, but then lost it. The SABC Group executive of news and current affairs said the show lost its mojo and signature influence, and after 24 years, it was axed. ETV also joined the party with Third Degree in 2000, but when anchor and executive producer Deborah Patter left after 13 years, so did the show.
That's it for this program. Goodbye from all of us on the Third Degree team.
To this day, no one holds a candle to Carte Blanche. With its mix of serious news and just good old entertainment, it satisfies.
If I said, "Jy moenie bek vir kopie," you might reply, "Ek maak jou Boris warm."
Sorry, this is sad.
Introduces us to many faces.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, that sounded like a red-throated reneg. I think I'm saying it right.
I don't even know where I'm looking, but I'm looking with you.
And you have to have one of these because it's like riding a horse. You've got to slap your ass the whole time to keep the flies off.
And you're not even being kinky.
No!
And it forges a path for veterans in the industry and new aspiring journalists.
And I'd watched the first Carte Blanche when I was 15 years old, growing up in rural KwaZulu-Natal in a little village called Amzinto. And for the first time, I saw this thing called investigative television journalism. Never seen it before. Mid-80s, 1988, we forget that. Caspers and Yalas were in townships, and it was a tough time. And I saw Derek, Ruda, Manu Padiachi, and I thought, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life.
And let's admit, if it wasn't for Mnet's finesse and all the magic it brought, you wouldn't be watching Slow. This pinky pinch is for you, Derek. Carte Blanche is more than the sum of its parts, from the front of the camera to way behind it. In 2013, Jessica Pitchford published a book. When you open it up, there's a foreword by show producer George Mazarakis. It's about our information-dense age, that anyone today can have access to material that was once considered the rarefied preserve of the elite. There are no secrets to the hard slog of investigative journalism. We no longer need to protect our techniques. In fact, we need to be transparent and open about what we do and why we do it. If we want to own the right to challenge with the same principles those who govern us. It will be a dark day when Carte Blanche is not our Sunday ritual, because South Africa has the right to see it all, and the show must go on.
One more time for Derek.
One more time for Derek. There we go.